Hi, this is Greg. This is video number 1 in a series of 4 training videos that IACCAC has commissioned for some development to discover and examine the future of case management as a behavior tool. And that's one of the issues that we're going to take a look at in this video. What's happening in 2020 that's causing us to re-examine? It's a crisis. And Maxwell says that close scrutiny will show that most crisis situations are opportunities to either advance or stay where you are. And that's pretty accurate. So this is the first of 4 videos that will examine the future of case management delivery, especially in light of the fact that we are now living in a post-COVID-19 or a continuing COVID-19 world. Video number 1 lays out the crisis reaction we've had to case management in 2020. Video 2 will examine then some multiple delivery methods that are alternatives to what we've typically done in face-to-face delivery. Video number 3 will review the available research on various delivery methods. And then the final video will provide some suggestions on skill development and training that may be required. My hope is that these videos will trigger some questions in your mind that you will be willing to discuss with me as we schedule some Zoom meetings in November to kind of talk about what this means going forward. Judy Smith says there's always an opportunity with crisis. 2020, I think you will agree, is a crisis. Just as it forces an individual to look inside himself, it forces a company to re-examine its policies and practices. And that is exactly what most of our community corrections agencies are struggling with right now. Are our current policies and practices sufficient moving forward in a post-COVID world? So here's the standard response when COVID-19 protocols were put in place. We talked about physical distancing, that social avoidance, all the protocols, the face mask, etc. And it led to a number of things. We closed the office and we moved to remote work many times. We then provided case management by phone or video. Whether we were prepared or not, we were kind of thrust into it. But in that setting, our CQI kind of went out the window because we did not have accountability and measurements in place for remote case management. Also, as this pandemic began to wind down, supposedly, we started bringing staff back with limited contacts, and we continued some case management by phone or video and added some limited face-to-face case management. And then we slowly reintroduced face-to-face case management for higher risk. I know some counties were not impacted by this at all, but this is typical for most of you. And in the middle of that, we had kind of a limited strategy to deal with J-curve effects, which I will describe in a minute. And now we're trying to discover where my current J-curve location is and what does that mean in my next steps. So let's talk about the J-curve. The blue line at the top is the pre-COVID-19 productivity that your agency had achieved. If you had things going pretty well, the blue line is where you were. The minute you move to remote work and close the office and move staff to work from home, productivity decreased. There's no doubt that productivity went down because we didn't have good measures in place. And so when we start to reintroduce and move people back to the office, people had, let's face it, people had become lazy. They didn't have people looking over their shoulder. There wasn't accountability. And now we're trying to recover our productivity that was pre-COVID. So the productivity starts at the beginning of the J, the lowest part of the J where the red arrow is. And when people came back to the office and got back in routines, productivity went down. It didn't go up because people are now having to reintroduce and reacclimate to what it means to get that productivity in an office setting. Also, how long productivity went down was determined by how aggressive or how instinctive the leadership of your agency was to increase levels of accountability to get people back in line and back in productivity. The amount of productivity at the end of the J-curve gets us back close to where we should be at the blue line. So how long my productivity went down, how long my down productivity lasted, and how quickly I could accelerate productivity is a direct result of leadership. That's what we talk about in J-curve analysis. So it's interesting when you think of the J-curve, where does that place you? Where are you? Are you still on the productivity going down? Are you still, it's down and the duration is still going on? Or has your productivity come back to where it was pre-COVID? We typically discover in the J curve that it takes 6 to 12 months to recover productivity where it was before we got stuck in a crisis. And so this gives us some help in terms of analyzing where we're going forward. So with that in mind, let's talk about some communication theory. Laswell's maxim, it says, who says what in which channel, to whom, to what effect. And I want to talk to you about channels because this is what post-COVID is asking us to look at. We're having to change our channels. And so over the telephone, OTT, face-to-face is our normal standard channel. Video, delivery of cognitive behavior techniques or change, and then telephone cognitive behavior therapy. And this is all done in a remote case management with a physical distance model. And so why does this matter? Well, what parts of communication are missing when I move from face-to-face to video? What parts of communication are missing when I move from face-to-face to telephone? Where's my verbal? Where's my tone? Where's my nonverbals in a physical distance environment? So here's a chart that kind of helps us get a handle on it. You got face-to-face, you have video and telephone. Notice in face-to-face, I've got verbal, tone, nonverbal, and I'm in a proximal relationship. I'm in the same area. I'm in a room together. When I'm in video, I may have verbal, tone, but my nonverbals are limited because I can't see everything on the body language piece. And I'm in a distal situation. There's distance between the two people here. And so I have some limited nonverbals. On telephone, now I'm just verbal and tone. I'm absent nonverbal completely because I have no visual. And I'm at a distal setting. And so this is why it matters when we talk about the remote delivery of case management. Now, back in the 60s, Morabian's research said that the bulk of communication is nonverbal and visual. Only 7% of face-to-face communication is verbal. And if you think about that, 93% is from nonverbal and visual, only 7% from verbal. The problem is when verbal and nonverbal contradict each other, the nonverbal is mostly true because people can control their verbal communication, but they can't fake the nonverbal cues. So with that in mind, now look what happens when I do remote case management. Face-to-face, distractions are staff controlled. I can set my office up and I can control the distractions. But when I move to remote video and telephone, the distractions have to be client controlled. And what happens if I have a client that can't control the distractions? My ability to communicate is almost totally limited. Kristen Bell at Drexel University did some research and discovered that tone accounts for 86% of the total communication and words account for the remaining 14% when I'm on the telephone. Wow, that is shocking. 86% is tone. In another video, we'll talk about what tone means and how we can do some training and some skill development on tone. So to end the video, a couple of concerns I have. What are our effectiveness and outcome measures? How are we going to measure remote case management? What's it look like? Do we have those measures in place or do those have to be developed? What's our client attitudes toward remote case management? Does technology and anxiety play a role? Some of the research I'll talk about that technology, anxiety, or lack of technical skills can really limit our productivity. What's our case manager attitudes toward remote case management? This all falls and revolves around case managers. And if case managers are resistant, then we're going to have a huge problem moving to new delivery methods. What's the impact on the client case manager relationship? We discover in the research that the relationship between the case manager and the client is the #1 predictor of success in client change. Case manager training. Is our current training adequate for delivery methods, for new delivery methods? Or have we trained case managers to deliver case management only in a face-to-face setting? What's our time constraints and or boundaries? What's the recommended time frame for remote case management? Is it identical to face-to-face? Is it shorter? These have to be discovered and decided. What about scheduling challenges? When will this conversation take place? Who initiates the contact? How long should the contact last? How should I record the contact? What do my notes look like? These are all challenges from scheduling. So How prepared is your agency to move to a new case management delivery method? What changes have you already initiated? How are these changes being measured? Do you have adequate measures in place? Are you experiencing success? Or to put it as one famous TV doctor said, how's that working for you? Video number 2 examines multiple delivery methods for case management. Not so much the face-to-face, but the remote case management, and we'll look at those in video number 2. Questions from each video will be discussed during scheduled Zoom meetings. My hope is that you will be able to join us for some of those Q&A moments.